right. Thank you. We are now resuming our August 23rd, 2002 Santa Cruz City Council meeting. Next up on our agenda is item number 19, Homelessness Response Update. For members of the public who are streaming this meeting, if this is an item you wish to comment on, now is the time to call in using the instructions on your screen. Please note that public comment period for the below will be both for 19.1 and 19.2. Public comment will be limited to no more than a total of 30 minutes, and each speaker will have 2 minutes. The order will be a presentation of items 19.1 and 19.2 by staff, followed by questions from council. We will then take public comment and then return to the council for deliberation and action. At this time, we have our presenters of this item, Larry Mwale, our City Homelessness Response Manager, is here with us in person, and we will receive an update regarding council-directed homelessness response programs and services, including the Homelessness Response Action Plan and implementation details, objectives, and outcomes. Welcome, Larry.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Can you hear me all right? Good afternoon. Larry Mwale, Homelessness Response Manager. As mentioned, we have a two-part staff report this afternoon, the first being an update on the homelessness response services and our homelessness response action plan, and then the second item, a report on the Benchlands Restoration Project, which I will turn over to Deputy City Manager Lisa Murphy. So within the quarterly update, there's four broad topic areas that we'll cover. The first being progress reports on the implementation of our Homelessness Response Action Plan, updates on regional collaboration related to homelessness, then safe sleeping.
One moment while we get screen sharing activated here. There we go. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So as I was saying, there's four parts to our agenda for the update, the quarterly update, updates on the Homeless Response Action Plan, updates on the regional collaboration on homelessness, then updates on our safe sleeping and shelter programs and the camping services and standards ordinance, and then the fourth section is safe parking and the oversized vehicle ordinance updates. So in the first section, implementation of the Homelessness Response Action Plan. Just for context again, back on March 8th, Council adopted our 3-year Homelessness Response Action Plan that articulated 5 broad areas: building capacity and partnerships, permanent, affordable, and supportive housing, basic support services, including hygiene, sheltering, and storage, care and stewardship, and the 5th area, community safety. So in the two most recent quarterly updates on March and in May, as we rolled out the 3-year Homelessness Response Action Plan, began implementation, one of the key areas was building internal capacity to be able to do this work. And at the May meeting, we outlined a number of positions to build that infrastructure. Since that time, we have completed recruitment and have hired and onboarded team members within the homeless response team for the city, including a full-time, homelessness services coordinator, and 3 outreach and shelter specialists that are all part-time, equate to full-time equivalents. And we also hired a community relations specialist dedicated to homelessness response. In that time also, the community service officers, the 2 positions that were part of this plan, have been dedicated to work on homelessness-related topics. Presently, in the hiring process, detailed in orange on your screen, are the positions related to the homelessness response field division within Public Works. A number of these positions were new, so we've created new job descriptions. That process has been completed, and now those positions are open for recruitment presently, and hope to have that team on board soon. Another key part of building internal capacity to do the city's homelessness response work is about building capacity around information systems in 2 key areas. First, data systems, to be able to track information on participants that we're providing services to, either through the city's direct programs or through contracts with partner agencies. And so in the last quarter, city staff and our contractor providers have gotten access to the Homeless Management Information System, HMIS, that is administered by the county. So those programs are now in that system, and we're collecting client data, and that will allow us to be able to, as a system, track contact, connections to other service providers, and outcomes. So that's been a key accomplishment and next step in this process in the last 3 months. Another piece of that is a new countywide HMIS outreach module that's being piloted. And again, this is a tool to use for persons, collecting information on persons who may be experiencing homelessness who are not yet connected to a service provider. And this is sort of the opportunity to begin to gather that information, do some initial assessment, and to be able to connect to services and other providers. And this is being piloted as part of the Benchlands focused rehousing effort that is underway in collaboration with the county and community partners. And so this is the first time it's been used. City outreach staff have been integral into this implementation. They're responsible for, right now, there's about 155 persons who've been entered into the module who are also in HMIS now, and that work's really been done by the city outreach staff at this point. And again, just from that, seeing who's already in HMIS, what service connections they have, and that's really enabling our partners, both in county programs and nonprofits, to begin to identify where there's connections already, where, for instance, somebody may have a voucher but doesn't have a housing navigator, so it can really inform practice and work with our homeless community. The other key area where we're building internal capacity is around budget and financial systems. For the first time, the city now has a new homelessness response budget division that was created for this fiscal year that's really going to allow us to have an integrated budget, looks cross departments, so that we can understand where our resources are going in a very holistic way, and be able to, through the reporting structure that's being developed, to really monitor costs, understand where our budget is, and be able to make those analyses about where to best dedicate our resources. Some updates with respect to regional collaboration on the homelessness fronts. One broad area is on the Coral Street master planning process. The first part is we have planned a design charrette around the Coral Street that we identified at the last quarterly update. The RFP was released and a vendor's been selected. That contract is nearing completion. It's with the Dahlin Group. And the process for that work with a consulting firm to lead this master planning design charrette will involve doing a number of stakeholder interviews in the community, developing some alternative design and development scenarios, and then facilitating a community input process around those to develop a preferred plan. So that work is about to get started with the consulting firm. It's projected to be about a 7-month process, so we'd expect that to be completed around the end of February.
Can you just clarify the definition of the word charrette for members of the public?
I will do my best. Maybe somebody has a better definition, but it's a facilitated process where you get input around, in this context, different designs and development scenarios, so people can provide input and feedback. They take different forms. Some are done in a single session. Some play out over multiple days, where you have that feedback, and then new designs are developed and represented, and it's sort of an iterative process. But fundamentally, it's facilitating a process of engaging and getting input from stakeholders on a design process. Hope that's sufficient.
Thank you.
So that will be getting underway soon and should be complete in February, according to the 7-month plan. The other key piece around the master planning process was the acquisition of property at 125 Coral Street. This is the property immediately adjacent to the Housing Matters campus on Coral Street, and it abuts the building that actually has the Hygiene bay that is a city property. And what this property acquisition does is, it gives another piece to be included in that design process, to think about what the potential uses are and what can be built out at scale at that campus through this process. So that was a key acquisition. The other element at Coral Street that's currently underway is the Hygiene Bay remodel that provides shower services and hygiene services for all the users at the Housing Matters campus. If you recall, that's been in much need of repair. They've been relying on portable shower trailers for quite some time. An RFP went out for that, and a contract was awarded in June for that work, and the construction project is underway, and that too is expected to be completed in February. So that will be a significant upgrade and expand services on the Housing Matters campus there at Coral Street. Other aspects of regional collaboration, to give you some quick updates on, first being the Housing for Health Partnership. And this is the regional continuum of care organization. It launched under this new name and this new governance structure back in April. The group meets, the policy board, which is responsible for high-level planning and decision-making, meets quarterly. So there was a June meeting, and then we just met on August 17th, last week. Some key actions and informational updates that came out of those meetings. On June 8th, the Housing for Health Partnership Board approved submission of a joint application for the Housing, Homeless Assistance, and Prevention Local Homelessness Action Plan to the California Interagency Council on Homelessness. That was a $6 million grant proposal, roughly. They also discussed updates that are being made to the coordinated entry system that are in process. So there was no action that came out of that. There's an operational committee that is working on modifying and updating the policies and procedures for coordinated entry. And then they also shared the news, the successful Home Key application, the grant award for the Veterans Village that took place this summer. And at last week's quarterly meeting, the policy board ratified the submission of 4 California emergency solutions. Opportunity related to unsheltered and rural homelessness. That will award up to about $300,000 a year locally. Eviction prevention, again, back in April, collaboration with the county, looking at efforts to be able to support and prevent eviction. The city committed $150,000 to support eviction prevention efforts. and amended a contract with the Community Action Board to implement that work. That contract's been completed, the work is underway, and do not have an update at this point in terms of how much has been spent and how many families have been supported so far, but we'll bring an update on the use of that $150,000 at the next quarterly update. We also released an RFP for pre-development grant funding to support the development of permanent supportive housing, shelters, or transitional housing projects. We allocated up to $500,000 for this fund, expecting individual awards to be in the range of $50,000 to $125,000. The application deadline was extended to September 9th. And through this process, the staff has worked collaboratively with the county on developing the application criteria, the rubric, and they'll be partners in the review process. So the deadline is September 9th. We'll be reviewing those applications that come in on a quick timeline and hoping to be able to make grant awards in October. And I mentioned a little bit briefly in the context of HMIS and the new outreach module, but we also have an effort going around Benchlands service coordination, particularly with a rehousing focus related to the closure of the camp and the restoration of the park. So we're collaborating city, county, and nonprofit agencies to engage everyone that is residing in the Benchlands, to do that outreach engagement, to see what service connections be made, work with them to develop their individualized rehousing plans. And so the first step is city staff is working and conducting a census of the persons in the Benchlands. That data is getting into the HMS outreach module. We're having weekly service coordination meetings with partner agencies to talk through this process, setting up a schedule with other providers in the community and the county programs will be operating and working down in the Benchlands. There is a mobile office that's been placed on the county property, right behind the county building, above the Benchlands. That'll be a base of operations for service providers to work and meet persons to provide services and do those connections. And as I mentioned, the key piece about the data sort of systems integration here is identifying who's already in HMS, has been connected to service providers in the past, what information we have, to be able to really work and develop some individualized plans, as well as identify some strategies in terms of service needs. So like one I mentioned is there's a number of people that already have vouchers, housing vouchers, and so there's housing navigation resources. And so how do we make sure that we make those connections and people are paired off so they can get that support to utilize their voucher if ever possible. The other piece of information, and this was presented at the County Board of Supervisors meeting on August 9th with the Housing for Health Division's semi-annual update. It was also presented at the Housing for Health Partnership meeting last week. But the initial results from the point-in-time count that took place on February 28th of this year. This is the HUD-mandated census that's required. And this is the first point-in-time count that's been completed since 2019 as a result of the pandemic. More detailed results will be available. The final report is going to be published in 1 to 2 months, according to the county, but some initial sort of broad or high-level results were shared at that meeting. So first, it shows the census showed an overall increase of homelessness in the county of 6% between 2019 and 2022. That's an increase from 2,167 to 2,299 people in Santa Cruz County. That's the overall population of persons experiencing homeless. Among those who are unsheltered, the increase was 4% between 2019 and 2022, from 1,700 to 1,774. And then diving down a little bit into some of the findings, there are some positive trends based off the early data. There was a 59% decrease in homelessness among families with children under the age of 18. There was also a 94% decrease in unsheltered homelessness among families overall. And then homelessness among youth aged 18 to 24 declined by 61% overall, and among those unsheltered. But these positive trends and findings were tempered by some notable increases in other areas, specifically homelessness among veterans and people with disabilities that have experienced multiple or long episodes of homelessness. The data also indicated the number of chronically homeless people increased by 129% over the last 3 years, from 403 to 921. And the data also shows significant increases in the number of people with self-reported behavioral health and health problems that are experiencing homelessness. So more data will be available when the full report is released in a month or two, as I mentioned, and we'll bring that information as part of our next quarterly report. Updates on safe sleeping shelter and the CSSO. First, with transitional community camps, specifically it's 1220 River Street. Again, it's been maintaining near full capacity. As soon as we have openings available, we've been able to identify people to fill those positions. So we've had good enrollment at capacity since we've opened this program back in January. All participants have been participating in weekly case management meetings with city staff as required. As I mentioned, we have this program enrolled, participants enrolled in HMIS. There's access to on-site county benefit specialists that come to the 1220 River Camp. And we also have weekly on-site behavioral health support for people. So those services are coming on-site for program participants. And just a few notable outcomes since the last quarterly update. 2 people have obtained housing just a week and a half ago. 1 reunited with family and moved out of the county in addition to that. Overall, we have 10 people at 1220 River who have vouchers and are seeking housing. And I think one of the upsides of the service coordination that we're partnering with the county and other nonprofit providers through the Benchlands rehousing, but having these conversations and data sharing. Through that conversation, we identified that we have that number of persons with vouchers, and so the county is going to work specifically to see how to connect 1220 participants with housing navigation. So that's been a really positive development to try to get people in a position to be able to utilize those vouchers. In addition, we've had one of the participants obtain full-time employment and 2 are actively seeking employment. And related to that, part of that is the outcome of a lot of work and sort of getting people to have their vital documents in order and be able to make it through the employment process. The other element of our safe sleeping and shelter programming is our programming up at the National Guard Armory, partnering with the Salvation Army. Called that the initial City Overlook program was opened in mid-May. That's a program that has space for 75 persons. There's 24/7 program for 65 people in 10 spaces for overnight. Again, the program includes meals, transportation, showers, and we reached full enrollment up at that program back in June, and it's been maintaining full enrollment since that time. If you recall from the June 28th council meeting, authorized an expanded contract with the Salvation Army to operate inside the Armory building. The county had been operating their program inside the building until June 30th, and when they closed that down, the city started working on plans to open a program in that place. So that contract was approved. We've been working with Salvation Army to get the contract signed and to get the program up and running and operational. we are getting close. We have weekly status check-in meetings with Salvation Army while we're waiting for the contract to be signed by corporate, but they have opened recruitment for their positions so that they can expand this program. So that is moving forward. Like is the case in a lot of areas in the local employment sector, they're encountering labor supply challenges and finding sufficient qualified people for these positions. So that has delayed the process a little bit as well. But they're also working with a temp agency to be able to fill positions and continue to move forward. So again, we hope to have that open in the month of September in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Some other updates on some of the safe sleeping and shelter expansion that we have discussed in previous quarterly updates. We're continuing to work at shelter expansion at Housing Matters at Coral Street. We're now looking at using the River Street Shelter property, what has been the River Street Shelter. The condition of the building really does not make it cost effective to be able to rehabilitate it and remodel it. So the decision has been made to demo that building so that it could be utilized in other ways to support shelter expansion. So we're moving forward with that. The process is underway. And then once that is completed, the plan is to have Housing Matters operate a program at that site that the city will purchase the shelter structures, whether they be pallets or similar type sleeping structures. The county will purchase those, and then the city will purchase those, and the county will fund the program and operations at Housing Matters. And so that will serve up to 30 people. The specific number will really depend on the specific shelter product and the configuration of that property. Again, the city continues to support the county in looking at motel or hotel use through master lease options that can expand capacity. And specifically, the county is looking at being able to expand capacity by 80 to 100, working with funding from the healthcare system to be able to support that program and operation at a local hotel. So that's in the works. And again, we continue to look at and discuss opportunities at other properties to be able to expand shelter in the city. And again, as we'll report back at later times when there's something specific. The final area for updates in our quarterly update is safe parking in the oversized vehicle ordinance. Again, Tier 1 is operational. That is an overnight program. There are 3 spaces available at the Santa Cruz Police Department lot. In operation, PD has really been making referrals to Tier 2 because we have capacity there, and Tier 2 is a 30-day program. So we still have that capacity, but while we have Tier 2 space available, trying to directly refer people to a Tier 2 where they can stay for at least 30 days on an overnight basis makes operational sense. So Tier 2 is currently operating at Lot 4. There's 6 spaces at that location. We do have expansion plans for other lots to be able to reach the 30 spaces that have been directed for a Tier 2 program by council. And the locations that have been identified has the potential up to 48 spaces. Some in the coastal zone, many outside the coastal zone. And so the final plans will depend on how the ordinance moves through the Coastal Commission to see what locations are available, but irrespective, we've got the ability to expand to the council directive of 30. And again, presently, enrollment is 3 persons in the Tier 2 safe parking program. The Tier 3 is a full-time, 24/7 program that has case management, wraparound support services. We entered into a contract with the Association of Faith Communities and AFC in the free guide. That contract was approved by council in June. We've been working with them to get that program operational. That will be operating at the Armory building as well in the front area between the parking lot and the building. That's where the county's pavilion program was previously. So we've made infrastructure modifications to bring electricity out to the front of the building, get a mobile office placed to get that ready. AFC and Free Guide has hired their staff and has conducted their training. And they've already done outreach to identify a first group of program participants. There's capacity in terms of their services for up to 24 vehicles. The actual number is going to be dictated by the size of the vehicles and what can fit on that space at any given time. But they're ready to go and actually projected to start at the end of this week. And then an update on the oversized vehicle ordinance, the coastal development and design permitting process. Again, the council reviewed and approved the coastal development and design permit back on April 12th. There was an appeal to the Coastal Commission that was submitted. Most recently, the Coastal Commission had an initial hearing on July 14th of this year, and they found that substantial issue exists with the coastal permit and that they will take action at a de novo hearing at a future date that has not yet been set. And that concludes our quarterly update, and I'll turn it over to